Okay. So we have 10 3-foot long pieces of 400-pound Aramid, braided Aramid line. So I'm going to set and make some crackers here. It's a 400-pound braided Aramid line. And this is a custom needle. So this is like 6.5 inches long. I've got a piece, it's internally threaded. And this is whipmaker cord. And I'm going to measure and go into this hollow braided line. And people sometimes ask why I've wanted to make my own needles, which I have a whole video on making the needles. But one of the reasons is for making these crackers. So you get this tucked inside, and then inside the tuck that cord 1/4 inch or so into the Kevlar braided line. It's good to have a tent stake or a fid. So, and this is just a longberry splice. And put the tent stake in as a set for the eye. And then measure out the next cracker. So you can also, for this 400-pound Aramid line, you can also use a Tandy regular lacing needle if you want, but you have to sand it down below 1.7 millimeters to get it to fit inside of this line. And this is a 1/16 inch piece of K&S tubing, so it's 1.588 millimeters, or 1/16 of an inch. And I tapped a thread into one end and cut the other end with a pair of dikes to create like a nail point. So once you tuck the cord inside the little bit of line, then you put that over the top and check it down. And so this will allow you to make tapered crackers where you'll get fewer knots in your cracker, but you'll have the ability to make matched pairs of crackers out of Aramid line. So like you can set them like that. Well, hello. This truck with pocket snakes, I'm just setting and building some crackers. People are often interested in how I go about things. This needle is also very nice if you want to make double 275 paracord loops or put an English eye into a strand of paracord that's 275 paracord. So I'm using a tent stake or a fid to hold the eye open long enough to seat it. And that way you get a consistent eye loop for attaching the cracker. And this is a 1.5 or 1.588 millimeter or 1/16 inch needle that's 6.5 inches long, roughly. So it makes it so that I can longberry splice crackers out of braided line. This particular braided line is so tightly woven, it's only an 8 plate of Aramid or Kevlar-ish material. And these are some tough crackers for admittedly heavier whips or fire whips. But when you have to set and make crackers because other people want them, you can measure like 5.5 inches, or you can use the needle. And then once you put it through, you know you have enough to tuck the tail with no problem. So, but it makes this easier to do than short needles. It helps it go faster. And people are always asking how I make stuff look so easy. Hello there. It's good to see you. I'm making crackers today. So today I'm making Aramid crackers out of 400-pound braided Aramid. And this is whipmaker cord, which is about half as thick as a sheath of 550 paracord or 275 paracord. And I'm using a tent stake as an eye set or something to get the eye exactly how I want it. And as you're working on stuff, you have to have a way to easily go through the cord, or you're going to drive yourself crazy with how much time it takes to do everything. And so I made this needle. There's a video up on my site. It's about 11 minutes long. That's a full length video on how I made that needle. I'm going to try and make a better tutorial for how to make an even better version of the needle, but it's going to have to wait till I've got time to do that. And then the nice part with this is you can use a pair of scissors and get out to the end. And now you've got a matched pair of crackers. So if you have somebody that's dual wielding or throwing two whips at a time that are matched pair, you can have matched length crackers that are identical. So, but if you need custom needles made that are internally threaded so you can make crackers or stitch things with leather or other things, the Tandy makes a needle called a permalock that you can get a regular size needle that's 2 millimeters. This needle is 1.5 millimeters, so it's a 3/4 of the diameter. So it's quite a bit thinner, but it makes the job a whole lot easier having the right tool. And if the right tool isn't available for purchase, you can always make something. At least that's how I go about it. And so, for your information, if you have 16th inch KNS brass tubing and you nip the end of it with a pair of dikes, turn it over, nip it, and then sand it down so it's smooth, you get this kind of arrowhead or nail point that's sanded a little bit. This end, you use an M1 watchmaker's tap for metric size 1. It's like the smallest little tap that I could find. And then you can tap it, and then that lets you put on a piece of whipmaker cord or some other kind of cord. But when you have the right diameter for the material, which 1.5 millimeters works so much better than the 1.7 that I used to use, that this process is much, much faster. And I caught a fiber down here. Which means I'll have to work the fiber over the point. I don't know why I'm trying to do that with my fingers. It's a lot easier to use the needle. So the weird challenges that you run into, you have to find solutions for. But it's always an option to make your own tools. In fact, sometimes it's the only option because nobody makes the tools. At least not in mass. I've got one fiber. Aramid is such a strong fiber. So I'm going to have to recut that and retorch it, but I'll show you how you go about doing that. You will run into challenges with everything you do. If you guys have questions, you can sort of ask questions. I'm making bullwhip crackers or whip crackers for a fire whip or for a heavier whip out of 400-pound Aramid line. So thought I would share the process, how I go about it. Here's a little cheap torch from the corner market. And so this needle that I custom made is a little over 6.5 inches long. And it's internally threaded. So I put the camera up a little higher. So you have to cut at an angle. And you torch it and you just want to get enough of a tapered cone at the end that'll fit in that 1 millimeter hole. Screw it on. You want to run your fingers over it to see if there's any burrs, because if there's any burrs, it'll catch on the aramid and yank it out at the bottom of the needle. So do you also make the rest of the whip? Yes, I also build ball whips and snake whips. A lot of different styles and varieties. And I even do fire whips occasionally when somebody asks. It's not my everyday build, but I have braiding videos on how to make whips. Mostly just sharing how I'm working because I find it easier to shoot a live video and talk to people or try and explain stuff as I go. What do people use whips for? Well, you can use them for driving cattle, you can use them for killing flies. Killing flies is a lot of fun. Trimming the bushes. Lots of people. There's stage performers that use whips. In general, I recommend you keep time and a half or 2 times the length of the whip away from any other human being so you don't accidentally whack somebody with the end of a whip. But I build short whips for people, I build big whips for people. But I started making and designing my own crackers and my own tools like this needle for building the crackers more efficiently. Because people would ask for a pack of crackers and I'd build a pack of crackers. And if it takes you 20 minutes to put out 10 crackers, it's going to be a long day. You know what I mean? And of course, I dropped my scissors. So, I've got 4 unfeathered 400-pound Aramid line crackers. And then Nice part with using the tent stake is then you can take and make matched pairs that they're as identical as I can build the crackers. Then when you get 5 pairs, which is 10 crackers, you line up all the knots like so. And you tie an overhand knot, and then you roll the tails through a couple times, maybe 3 times. And that is a pack of 10 crackers there. Now these are unfeathered. You can, if you don't make me set and pick them apart, they'll last. They're easier for to let somebody else. Two reasons people buy them unfeathered. One is they want to make the feathers the length they want and stop it, or tie a knot where they want it to stop. Or some people prefer them already feathered. But I make them both ways. They cost more if you make me feather them. Hi, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes, and I wouldn't trying to read what people are writing. That's quite cool. Well, thank you. This is just some braided. So this is an 8-plate hollow braid. So an 8-plate hollow braid gives you a tapered cracker, or a cracker with variable stiffness, and that reduces the knots that get thrown into crackers, or helps reduce it. It makes kind of a long cracker. And putting a tail on, putting a piece of uh, whipmaker cord, which is a specialty braided cord. I got the cord, this is yellow, and it's my favorite color to use for a pole line, because it is a little bit bigger than the other colors, because they press it flat as it comes out of the braiding machine, and that pressed flat material shrinks with the heat that sets it in that shape. So if you can use a lighter color as your pole tube. And this is an amazingly uh, thin material, this whipmaker cord. It's 4 millimeters when it's pulled tight, 3/16 of an inch roughly. It's what they sell it as. The paracord store, Vince over at the paracord store, has different colors of it. It's one of the better places to get it. It's theparacordstore.com. He's not a sponsor or anything. He just supplies me with stuff I need, and I try and send people his way. This cord comes from, this Aramid cord uh, comes from a place. Let's see, the online place is, it's trying to think about what the name of the place is off the top of my head. So, but I'll try and post in some of my other videos. I've told where to get the cord. This is just a longberry splice. So the nice part with this is if you want to open up this loop, you can open it up, install it, If you don't open it up too far, you can chuck it back to its diameter. So if you open it up, you can open it up pretty big. You can chuck it back down. It's just long braid spliced. I'll also Brummel splice these where I put the tails through and then bring it back through. But for most things, just splicing it with long braid splices is just fine. You'll see that goes back to the shape. That's why I use the 10th stake to lock the initial size in. It's called twinline or twineline.com is where I got this material. And this is 400-pound Aramid line. And they also have Vectran and Spectra, and they have a bunch of different lines. So this is a custom made needle that I built. So this is 1/16 inch K&S tubing from Ace Hardware down the street that I've tapped with an M1 watchmaker tap. There's a video on how I made it, but the reason I made it was specifically to make these crackers, because these crackers are kind of a pain to make, because this line, it is hollow braided, but it's the hole in the middle is about, I don't know, millimeter and a half. It doesn't really like to be stretched to 1.7 or 1.8. You can't really use a 2 millimeter that easily through it. So, and this just makes it look like it's an easy thing to do, but it's largely the correct tool for the job that makes it easy to do. And having a needle that's 6.5, 7 inches long also allows me to use as a measuring tool. And once you put it through the center, makes it so that there's definitely enough room to tuck the tail. But this is a pair of Aramid braided line. They have another Aramid that is coated, that's black, that's called, the brand name of that is called Technora. This is the no name kind of Kevlar-ish material. Very long lasting, just kind of a yellow color. And I make crackers out of Technora and Vectran and Aramid and Kevlar, actual Kevlar. To make crackers out of a lot of different stuff. So, yeah, I'm just going to keep dropping stuff. But and people are always like, how do you do the stuff you do? So I started putting together some videos, and I try and share how I managed to, make crackers, share ideas for speeding things up so you don't tear your hair out. But this is a 1.5 or 1.588 millimeter. You could actually sand this needle down if you wanted to a bit. You could probably bring it down to 1.5 on the nose if you needed to. if stuff poofs out a little bit, you can kind of use the needle to tuck it in the tail a little bit. Oops. One of the problems is Aramid wants to fray, and so trying to tuck it in the end to get it to pull through is sometimes goes sideways. Hi there, it's Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I'm just building some Aramid crackers, long-lasting crackers. These are a simple longberry splice in a 400-pound pear Aramid braided line with a custom needle. And I've got a 1.5 foot long, 18-inch, 20-inch piece of whip maker cord I'm using as a pull tube to pull the Aramid through, because the Aramid, unlike paracord where you could melt the end and roll it, paracord is or paracord is meltable because it's nylon. This is Aramid, so it's not fireproof, but it doesn't melt. So like if you try and put a torch to it, it won't hold a flame, and there's nothing to stay burning. It just kind of puts itself out. So you can't melt it and roll it to put a needle on it. So you have to come up with ways of working with the material instead of fighting it so much. And I fight with material quite a bit, trying to figure out how it wants to be handled. But I have a video on how I make the needle that I'm using here to make these crackers, because nobody makes a 7-inch long internally threaded needle that is a 16th of an inch. I had to make it in order to get what I needed for the job, but I don't let much stop me from if I see a need for something. People always ask how I go about doing stuff. It's like, well, I figure out what I need, try and figure out if somebody is selling it, and if it's a real reasonable price, I'll buy it. But a lot of times nobody makes it because I'm asking for something that nobody makes, like a 7-inch, 16th of an inch diameter needle with a 7-inch length, and with a tapped screw thread into the bottom of the needle so I can screw it onto a scrap of paracord or a scrap of whipmaker cord. If you guys have questions, just type them out. And in between things, I tend to read and try and answer the questions. But I try and share some of what I'm doing. And I'll shoot little live videos while I'm working on stuff, because I think some people find it interesting. A lot of bored people. I'm one of them, but instead of doom scrolling for the afternoon, I prefer to make things. I get more enjoyment out of watching stuff turn into something it never was. So I'm a bit of a maker, bit of a jack of all trades. So what I do is cross pollinate. So this makes matched pairs of crackers that you can use with fire whips or larger bull whips, and it's para Aramid, so it's a very strong, very durable material. In this case, I'm using this long needle so I get a consistent long berry splice on these. In this particular Aramid, is very hard to find a needle small enough, like a 3 millimeter paracord needle. Let's see if I've got one of those. Yeah, here. I've got one of them right here. This is a comparison. Here's a stainless steel 3 millimeter paracord needle for comparison, for size comparison. It's less than half the diameter of that. So that won't go through this material. You have to have a thinner needle. You'll find that you have the same thing if you're trying to double up 275 paracord to make falls. Is it doesn't want to do it. 275 is so tight that you can't use a sheath like I'm using here to pull it through. You actually have to screw it onto the cord to pull it through. But if you want to make your own one of these needles, I have a about 11-minute video where I'm making two of them and a couple shortcuts from that. So, if you like the stuff I make, like it, it'll show up more in your feed. If you hit the subscribe button, it'll let you know, hopefully, when I'm making stuff and going live. I'm not monetized. I just love sharing what I do, and at some point I might monetize the channel, but yeah, don't make anything for sharing how I go about this stuff. And I don't charge people for stuff. I don't even have a donation thing, but oh, where did that? Of course, I dropped the scissors. So, I'll show you how I package up the crackers here. But this is a custom 7-inch, 16th inch diameter by 7 inches long, and it's got an internal thread on it, so I can screw on a piece of whip maker cord. It makes making the crackers a lot easier out of this braided line. But I don't believe knowledge should be kept secret. I think you should share useful things or share ways of doing things, because so much gets lost as people pass away. The world needs more whip makers and people making things. And even if you don't make whips and you don't make crackers, if you are a beader, for instance, and you want to bead a whole bunch of stuff, this is a 1.5 mm or 16th inch needle that's 7 inches long. You can bead things with this needle, and it's internally threaded. It's got a 1 mm hole that's tapped on the end. So even if you're not the person to do certain things. Oh, I haven't tried this needle out on some stuff. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not sure where I put the other scissors. So this is ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. It's very similar to Dyneema or Spectra, which are name brands. This is the generic version. People call it Chinesium. Chemically similar, but super strong. The scissors don't like it. Now this stuff is slick, so you can't, or you wouldn't want a longberry splice this. So this cord, you can use a regular paracord needle with a piece of the whip maker cord. And so you can Brummel splice or blood knot or bleed knot lock the longberry splice. So you put the long end through the side, make a loop, then you take and go through the side. You fold the loop and tuck it, pull it through the side. Now you have two slip knots, two slip knot loops. Put it on a tent stake. Like so. And then catch a fingernail and kind of break the bonds. Now this is like less than a millimeter thick, but this one you can actually use a 3 mm needle to go through. So although this stuff catches on every little thing, so it's mostly about getting it to stay in the center. Once it starts going out, then it's going to be fighting you. But the side, tuck it. So it was starting to catch now. This one you can use a more oblique angle. And optimally, you want to take all of the melted bits and screw it inside this needle. We're going to be fighting it every time it catches on the weld. Now this is 260-pound line. It's braided material. Setting making crackers. Tuck the long end through the side and start a Brummel slice or a bleed knot. That cinches down there. You measure this off again. Penetrate all the way through. Take the loop from the other end. Tuck it, pull it through. Now you have 2 cinching loops. So if you catch it with your thumbnail, people always ask why my thumbnails are always torn up. Well, I use them. Always tearing them up. Just for laughs, I'm going to try the long needle. See if it's any easier with this. Don't know that it will be. Yeah, that long needle works great. See, without my uh, without disturbing it, see if I can find the center. A lot of this is just a feel thing. Yeah, see how much easier that works? That's a lot easier than what I was doing before. So this 6-inch needle that I made is probably going to be my cracker making needle. And this makes a Brummel spliced cracker. So that eye, no matter how hard you pull on it, will not move. You'll see I have multiple things in my hands. I'm constantly trying not to drop stuff. Hi, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I'm building crackers today, so let's see about plugging through the side. Take the long end, tuck it through, pull it through the side. Fold the loop and tuck it through. Actually tuck it. And once you find the center, this 1.5 millimeter cord is, or 1.5 millimeter needle is pretty awesome for making crackers. Especially at 6 inches long. These are very small crackers, really small diameter, super light. They're ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, very similar to Dynamo or Spectra. Very slick fiber, super strong, catches on everything. In fact, that may be what's happening here. Like I said, it catches on everything. But super strong fiber. This 260-pound braided line. It comes from a company. They sell it websites called Twin Line or Twine Line. I think it's Twine Line. So, and the nice part about using a tent stake, this is titanium tent stake. It keeps the eye size consistent. But no matter how hard you pull on this, the eyes will not collapse or slide out. And But even a really light whip, this cracker will work well. And I handmade this needle. It's a 16th inch K&S tubing that's been internally threaded with a M1 watchmaker's die to have an internal thread to catch the paracord that, or whipmaker cord that I'm using to pull stuff through. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's starting to get a little burr there. Sometimes you can just touch it with a flame and take the burr down. Sometimes it makes it worse. That time it made it worse. Got to get a small enough cone you can screw it into a 1 millimeter hole, which sometimes is the biggest challenge of melting a taper, is to get a fine enough point. And the second part of that is you really need it to be very smooth in order to pull it through material such as this. But it helps having a smaller diameter to do stuff. Part of the challenge here is this material is super thin and it's fairly a loose weave. So getting into the middle of it without penetrating out the backside or without catching a half a fiber, half of a yarn. nice part about this material is it's 260-pound line, but it'll self feather. You don't have to feather these. And they'll tangle at about 1.5 to 3 inches, depending on how hard you're throwing it. Part of what you have to do here is get cleanly into the inner sheath, and not blow out the other side. See, I'm out the other side. And once you're just in the center, you can just push it. And tuck the tail. I'm going to have to give my hands a break here. And here's how to bundle up 10 of them. Just tie an overhand knot. And then loop these tails through 1, 2, 3 times on each side. And there's a 10 pack. So, thank you guys for watching. I've been here for about an hour. It's about time to take a break. I managed to make, I don't know, 30 crackers in an hour. It's definitely not a world record time, but it beats 20. So, thank you very much. Have a great night.